Hi, Victoria. Welcome to Beam's Eventalks. Very happy to see you here.
Hello, Nadia. Thank you for having me.
You're a very special guest for me since you're working in the very interesting field I've never heard about before. But first, please tell me a bit about your career path. How did you come to the events?
Right. Okay. Well, I've got more than I think 17 years in the events industry by now, and I started like many of us from completely different field. So I wasn't trained in events management initially, and my first education was in linguistics, and then accidentally, again, like many of us, I got into the events, and I fell in love with events, and I started running, working for, I worked for the university, and I did a lot of different business events. And then a few years later, I realized that, I just want to have the theoretical background. So I went back to the university and I got my master's in international events management from the University of Surrey in the UK. And then I continued, working in events. And again, a few years later, I decided that, I have accumulated a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and I wanted to share it. And I started my consultancy. I started working with event organizers or event owners to provide them with advice about event design and event concepts and event strategy. So I stopped running events, hosting events, but I kept doing this, content and strategy side of an event design. And and then at some point, I got this insight about, um, applying knowledge from sciences like psychology, neuroscience,
Mhm.
and behavioral science. And I started focusing on that. I started researching, reading, and meeting up with people from those fields to better understand how that can be used in events. And for now, this is one of my primary, um, uh, you know, directions, one of my primary focuses, applying and teaching how to apply behavioral science and psychology in events.
Yeah, so you in the field of psychology of the events, and you will tell us about scientific side of the industry. That's
Absolutely. I would love to. I would love to.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that's basically what I do, and I call it event psychology because this term is pretty easy to understand what it
Mhm.
means. So it's about applying knowledge and applying insights from neuroscience, behavioral science, psychology, and that might be, different uh, types of sciences like social psychology, cognitive psychology, and all the rest, and translating it
Mhm.
into events language, and teaching people and educating event planners about how we can use it in practice in events, because those scientific concepts sometimes they may seem too far away from what we are doing, but in fact, because events are people-centered business, everything, basically everything, can be applied to improve events, to make our decisions around the events better and more informed.
Yeah, actually, that was my second question about what
Okay.
actually is event psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And can you give some examples, like what can I get as a event organizer? What can I get from this science, like how the audience of the event will react to different things, or What is it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I argue that we can use event psychology insights at any point or at any stage, or, solutions can be applied to any challenge that we have, um, connected or tied to event. So like for example, the latest research that I shared, I think that was about listening to the speaker through headphones versus
Mhm.
via speakers. And so if people listen to my message wearing the headphones, I will be perceived as more empathetic, warmer person, warmer speaker, and that increases connectivity,
Mhm.
increases engagement. And that was a study that actually proved that. So it's not like a science fiction, it's something that was proved, and we can use it. We can, for example, introduce a podcast session, or actually provide or nudge people to use headphones at every session at an in-person event. And this little nudge, this little detail may increase engagement. And basically, it doesn't cost you a lot to do that, but the effect will be huge. And those kind of details are often overlooked because people think, it just doesn't matter, but it does. And a lot of things um, go unnoticed by our consciousness, and everything goes like on a subconscious level. And so if we know what drives behavior, if we know
Mhm.
what motivates people and how exactly, what makes them um, take specific action, we can fine tune our own actions, or, we can improve our specific, operations. And then we can actually use that to make our event experiences better, to improve that event experience.
You said about the research that all these things are proved by the research. So, are there any numbers like if I listen to the speaker via headphones, my engagement rises 2 times? Are there something like that?
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the research, and of course, we need to
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's not a guarantee that if the research says that increased in the trials, in their studies, by, I don't know, 25%, that you will definitely get the same number. But what I argue is that the solutions provided by sciences like behavioral science and psychology, they they help you understand first what else you can do, right? But also, it just helps you with some low cost solution. It doesn't cost you
Mm-hmm.
anything, and if you try and experiment, you can find what works for your audience specifically.
Is there is this area popular? How many people actually apply all this knowledge to their events?
Well, I don't have any stats on that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I can definitely tell you that I noticed the change because when I started 5 years ago, there was little understanding about what event psychology is.
Mhm.
And now the community talks about it more. And, I've got, for example, students that sign up for the online course on event psychology. And I've got more requests from event teams that want to learn about event psychology. Or for example, I do trainings for the event speakers, event psychology trainings, because we know now a lot about how to make virtual sessions or in-person sessions more engaging, more memorable using science insights. And so by that, I can tell you that yes, the community is more aware about the topic and is more eager to apply event psychology to their events designs.
Very good. And the most popular question here is what's your opinion about virtual events in comparison to in person ones?
Oh, right. Yes, I love this question. It's an ongoing debate, and frankly, I don't
Mhm.
understand why we spend so much time and energy debating what is better. We actually, I think if it's pretty obvious that we can all agree that there are pros and cons to both in person and virtual. And I actually think that we need to celebrate the fact that we have such a variety of options. And, it's about, again, inclusion, and it's about making sure that everybody can have the opportunity
Mhm.
to join the event. If I prefer and I can do in person, I can choose that. Or if I can or prefer virtual as an attendee, I can choose that. And it's great that we have those options. And so I do believe that we don't really need to choose between them. Like I said, there are pros and cons to both. So I really just celebrate that we have those technologies available right now, because if pandemic, for example, happened 10 years ago, we would have been
Mhm.
in a much worse position as the industry.
Does event psychology work in different way in case of virtual
Mm,
events, or
mm.
it's the same?
Yeah, obviously, there are differences because you need to take that into consideration. There are two different modes of
Mm-hmm.
interaction, for example, of perceiving the experiences, and but it can be applied to both, obviously, but then of course you need to know what works better in a virtual environment and what kind of challenges you have for in person specifically versus in a virtual environment. So yes, there are differences, and the example might be engaging senses. Obviously, when we are at an in-person event face to face, more senses naturally are engaged than in a virtual environment. And
Mm-hmm.
at a virtual event, we mostly rely on vision and a sense of hearing, right? And then, but there are ways, and I know that a lot of planners got creative with how we can engage other senses as well. For example, that physical swag that you can get, like an attendee can get while they are attending an event, and they can share that experience and touch things and kind of engage that sense as well, sense of touch, right? And so there are other ways. You just need to know how to do that properly and how our senses work in a virtual environment versus in a live environment. And when you know those differences, obviously you can again fine tune your event design.
Uh, Actually, I think now that probably in virtual reality, it's not so many options to change something. As your example about headphones at in-person events, it's okay. It's clear. You can
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
provide attendees with headphones. But in virtual reality, okay, I can, I don't know, change the colors in my design or something.
Um,
Can you give some
yeah,
examples
sure.
of
For example,
changing?
there was one research I recently learned about that showed that if the Zoom background, or I say Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever, the virtual background of a speaker is blurred,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of so they tested three options. real background, blurred background, and fake background. The fake
Mhm.
background is the worst in terms of how people perceive it and how people react and how people engage with that speaker. So such little detail, and if we know about that, we would be able to advise our speakers, okay, you can use blurred background or real background because because it's better for the perception of the attendees, and so your message will be more convincing, more memorable if you just use different type of background. So
Yeah.
again, that was tested, that was proven, and this is what we can take and use for our events.
Maybe the reason is that the quality of fake backgrounds are not so is not so well for now,
Well,
because yeah, it's really fake. You can see that it's fake. Um,
um, I think the reasons might be different, and I'm sure that there are a lot of a variety of reasons behind that.
mhm,
But if you dig deeper, of course, and if you're interested in the topic, you can always read
mhm,
more or research more about that. But even just taking the outcomes of the research or the studies and applying it and experimenting with that, that is
mhm.
a good step forward. And that what I think I would love to see more in events. Not just going by your gut feeling or following what others do,
Mhm.
uh, testing and applying solutions that are based on scientific studies and seeing how it will help you and your event.
Yeah, that's the approach that should be respected, I think. And I need to prove that my background is real. Yeah, and how many people are attended in this research? Is it a big sample? Sample is the right word?
I don't really remember about the sample.
Uh-huh. No, but
Just don't.
it's worth to trust this
Absolutely.
research.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how do you think from uh, are there any informations about the effectiveness of virtual events in comparison to in person
Mm.
from the psychological
Yeah. Well,
view?
there are not many studies that kind of can be tied to events. And a lot of them are testing like virtual environment, not particularly virtual events, but we can definitely kind of project that and take some findings from that anyway. So for example, the latest study that I shared, I think on LinkedIn, was that they tested communications between groups of people, within groups of
Mhm,
people in a virtual environment and live. And then they found out that if your aim is to generate more creative ideas, it's better to do that in person. But
mhm,
um, if you want people to choose to be better at choosing the best ideas, that might be better to be done at an in a virtual environment. And so that again speaks in favor of that idea that both in person and virtual have
mhm,
their pros and cons, and you just need to know what the strengths are of a particular type, rather than just try to combine them or force some interactions where they do not belong. You just need to know that, for example, okay, our aim is to be creative, so we need to do that. We will be better if we do it in person, right? And then, for example, another research was about networking, and so they say that human brains basically are wired to remember faces better when we meet face to face. So when I'm and what that means for events is if I'm creating an event design, I need to choose between virtual or in person. Then if my aim is um, to provide effective networking, but I know that people are meeting first time, for example, so it's better to do that in person, because then they will be naturally remembering each other better, uh, as if they meet online, for example. And so making sure that you understand that what type of event
Mhm.
fits your goals better, that's the key, and science can help you with that.
Okay, I really like your examples, so I want to hear some more.
Okay.
And,
Well, for example, walking session. Have you heard
uh,
about that? Format. It was introduced a while ago, but it wasn't probably popular until we started talking more about the science behind it. So walking is proved to be beneficial
mhm,
for people. It reduces stress, it increases cognitive abilities. And so if we combine that and if we translate that finding into the events context, what can we do? We can come up with this format of a walking session where people walk and learn. And so their learning is more effective because, while we walk, our cognitive abilities increased, right? And so that's one example. Or breaks are my favorite example. And
mhm,
I remember those sessions, the dreadful sessions where you sit in a dark room. Keynote is 1 hour and a half, and then
yeah,
with no breaks whatsoever, you got a number of other sessions which are also like 1 hour long. And I have been saying that we need to introduce more breaks and make it a valid component of our event agendas for many years. But I think that generally we started talking about it seriously once the pandemic hit, because people realized that it just doesn't work. And I remember sharing that research from Microsoft in the middle of pandemic, where they tested how breaks increase focus in a virtual
mhm,
environment. And so people were raving about that, and I was like, okay, well, but it's not news. That was actually there for a while, but if we take the science seriously, we can learn and apply the right solutions much faster, and that will take us to the bring us to the better position as the industry much faster as well. So that's what I'm arguing, that we need to listen what scientists teach us to be able to transform events faster and sooner than like what we have now.
yeah. As far as I know, event psychology also studies something about myths regarding the events, and particularly virtual events. Could you tell something about it?
Right. Yes, myths are my favorite. It's
Yeah.
because well, once the topic is trending, there is of course some misinformation that
Hmm.
comes up, and I believe that we need to combat that, because this is the area where we need to be as specific and as trustworthy as possible, because if we apply the wrong solutions and it didn't work, that just makes the whole thing like fake, right? And I that's why I always, ask, and I always provide in my post, for example, what I share. I always provide the proof, the
Mm-hmm.
research or the experiment that I read about. And it doesn't mean that it will work 100% for your case. No, again, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not because it's a fake study or a fake research. No, it's just because we need to understand the context and apply a variety of solutions at the same time. But I always like to share the research or a study to show that it's not a myth. It's not something that someone made up. And so one of my favorite is that focus is reduced in a virtual environment. So people
Mm-hmm.
are less focused. They cannot concentrate. The attention is blurred, and we cannot keep them focused. Well, how come that people can binge watch Netflix TV series for 2, 4, 6, 10 hours,
Yeah.
and their focus is still with them, right? So it's not about the people not being able to concentrate. It's about engagement and how you actually maintain attention. It's the attention management thing. And so if you don't know a lot about attention and how to manage it properly, then of course you lose a focus of the attendees in a virtual event, for example. But if you know how to do that, and if you apply that, then you're in a much better position.
Yeah, we talked about the example with the headphones at in-person events, and maybe you have one of your favorite, of the most impressive example of event psychology application at the event.
Um, Emotions. I mean, I've got so many. For example, I think that we pay little attention to emotional connection,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to address it more because people are emotional creatures. We are irrational, and some scientists argue that 95% of our decisions are based on emotion. So emotional reaction is our first reaction. Always, it's
Mm-hmm.
subconscious, so we cannot really control it. Let's put it this way. So, and because of that, you know. If we address emotions first, we are able to influence people and uh, to drive their decision making process in the direction that we want them to. And so let's take, it's not about events, but let's take the
Mm-hmm.
ads example. If you remember that famous Cadbury chocolate
Yeah,
ad
yeah.
with gorilla, what they did. So I mean, basically it's all about emotions. It's music, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that meaning behind all the visuals that we get, right? And what they did, they tested it 10 years later, and so they found that 76% of people remembered the brand behind that ad, even though the product itself was not mentioned in the ad.
Mm-hmm.
So people kind of still remember it 10 years later because emotions were addressed. And there are so many examples that we can relate to from our own experiences at events. When there is something emotional going on, when there is a moment, a shared laughter, for example, at a virtual event. That's what people remember because it's a strong emotion. And if there is a moment of surprise or a moment that you're anticipating, for example, a speaker that you're so eager to listen to, those moments are remembered much better. And so if we orchestrate, and we know how to do that, if we orchestrate emotions and this emotional journey of our attendees, then our event experience will be much more memorable. um, Another example of a study that I like is that they found that people crave for social connection in the
Mhm.
same way as they crave for food and water. So basically, they measure they put people under this AKG caps and stuff, and they measured their reaction after some social isolation. The same brain areas were affected as when people fast. So it's basically about the same, reaction of a human brain to either being hungry or being socially isolated. And so we can take a lot of things from that, and we can understand why people behave in a specific way, also at the events. And we can then fine tune the event design.
Yeah, it's a way to manipulate people. It's
Yeah, a word of caution, of course, that can be seen as, it's about how you actually do that, because yes, there is
Mhm.
a fine balance between influencing and manipulating. And so it yes, there is such kind of objection. People say that, well, that means manipulation. But if you act in the best interests of your attendees or your event partners, then it's about achieving the common goals and being transparent and just doing it for good, not for bad.
Very interesting. And if an event organizer want to know all these things, where it's possible to learn
Mhm.
event psychology.
You can start small, and you
Mhm.
can start by reading books or research or articles, and there are a lot
Or
of
your
articles.
posts.
I'm sorry.
Or your posts.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yes. So yes, there are a lot of posts and articles that explain how to do that in marketing, in a marketing field, or even
Mhm.
in events, like I do that, for example. And you, of course, you are welcome to uh, go further and explore it uh, like deeper, because, for example, my online course is geared towards specifically applying psychology and behavioral science in events. And so I provide a lot of information about how to do that in practice, how to take those behavioral concepts and apply them in events. And I show the examples and I explain how it works. And I provide a lot of, again, evidence and, studies and proofs. So this is the option. And attending events, those events from behavioral science field and psychology can also help. But I know, because I've been an event planner myself, and I know that event organizers don't have a lot of time for that. So that's my goal as well with what I do, is to provide them with um, with those solutions and with those recommendations and advice that is ready to be applied. You just take it, you just learn it and take it and apply it. And that's why I do the event psychology online course, and I've got the event psychology club that was recently launched, where I share exclusive content that I don't share anywhere else. And what else? And podcast as well. I just launched a podcast, and that's for everyone who is interested in event psychology.
Yeah, but I should join you in the club.
Absolutely. Yes, you're
Yeah.
very, very welcome. Yes.
And am I right that new generations of event managers, I mean students who are studying in this field, they are getting knowledge about all the things in the university right now in the US, or isn't like official discipline or of
Event
student?
psychology. No, it's not included as far as I know. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty new field, and I have discussions with people from the academia about that, because I believe that it's something that should be included in the modules,
Yeah.
in the programs of the university courses on events management. But as far as I know, there is no such module yet in the university programs.
Hope in the future we'll see.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's something that I believe is one of the top future ready skills, because if you don't know how people think and why they behave the way they do, you are not able to communicate effectively. You are not able to design events effectively, and like they say, it's not technology that will change the world, it's psychology. So it's all about that. We need to learn more about behavioral science, and we need to design events for how people think.
What could you advise to the event organizers in 2022?
Well, again, my best advice would be to learn about event psychology, and to apply those findings in events.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate your words. Thank you so much.